Welcome to the testimony series. We have Miss Katie McKee with us tonight. Katie, compared to many, is fairly new to the Well Worship Center. I think it's been maybe a year and a half thereabouts since she has been one of our members at the Well, and we are honored to have her with us today to tell us her story. Katie, welcome.
Thanks. Yes, welcome. If you want to just start off, you can let us know a little bit about maybe your childhood.
Okay. Well, I grew up in church, and my dad was a pastor, and so I really didn't know anything different. We just grew up in church. We were really involved. I can remember being a part of Vacation Bible School and going to camps, and I got baptized when I was 13, but I didn't really understand it very much. And I feel like overall I had a really church-centered childhood and a really solid Christian home. But when I was 16, we found out that my dad had been having an affair for several years. And so just a lot of things changed in a short amount of time. And we had to leave the church that my dad was pastoring at, and my dad had moved out. And so just there were a lot of changes, and I didn't really know how to deal with it. So I just chose not to. And so we had started going to our old church, and I had started hanging out with kind of the wrong crowd of people. And so I started hanging out with people, and we would party and drink, and I would just kind of do whatever I could to fill the void that I didn't really know what the void was, but I was just trying to push down all of the hurt that I was having. And
Just to be clear, so when you say that you were hanging out with the wrong crowd, if I understood that right, you were able to find that crowd, the wrong crowd, even in a church setting.
right.
Am I right about that? I think that's an important point, because a lot of people think just because you go to church or you're hanging out with people from church that automatically means a safe scenario, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, and it wasn't all just church crowd. I mean, I found it at school too, but I was really kind of looking for that, and which is just kind of weird because I wasn't raised to behave like that, and I just kind of found myself really deep into it, and I didn't realize it at the time how deep I was into it. But it went on for probably a few years, and I was still going to church the whole time though, and I honestly didn't see anything wrong with it because I thought I had been baptized when I was 13, and I had asked Jesus into my heart when I was 5, and so I thought I was fine. But then after a few years, I just kind of got tired of it, and it wasn't really fun anymore, and I thought that I was fixing all the hurt that I was feeling, but really I was just creating more hurt. And so I met with my pastor at the church I was attending, and I told him that I thought maybe if I was going to a church that had more college-aged kids and just had more people my age, that maybe I would enjoy church a little more. And he had told me about the Well, and so I thought, well, since he told me, I'm not going to the Well. And so I just totally wrote it off. But then one of my best friends was getting married at the Well, and so then I had the opportunity to meet you two, and I thought, well, it's not that bad. So the next week, I wasn't even really planning on going to the Well. I just kind of thought about it that morning, and so I was like, well, I'll try it. And I really, in my mind, I wanted to hate it the whole time. And so for the first 30 minutes, I was just thinking of all the reasons why I wouldn't like it. And then Branson was preaching that morning, and I remember him saying, you're either worshiping and serving God, or you're worshiping and serving the devil. And first, that just stood out to me, and I was like, oh. And it was everything I had done for the last few years was right in front of me, and I had realized I wasn't worshiping and serving God, and I didn't know how I had ended up so deep, and I really just didn't know how to get out. And he was going up and down the aisle too, and that was making me really uncomfortable, and I was like, I need to change something. And so I went to the altar, and I didn't get saved that day. I just that was the first time I think in my life that I had been more willing to change my life and being more
open
to changing. And so I started changing a few things in my life, like the way I talked and some of the people I hung out with, but I didn't feel like I needed to give up partying or drinking, because I remember honestly thinking that God didn't want me to give that up because I was in college, and that's what college kids do. And so I thought it was just okay, even if you were a Christian. And then there was one night, some things had happened, and so I kind of reverted back to how I used to deal with hurt and pain, and I ended up in a really bad situation, and the next day I just realized things have to change, and I have to give up everything, and you have to give everything to God even when you don't really want to, and sometimes it costs you your own pain. And so that was just kind of my moment. I was in my room, and I just remember laying on the ground just literally crying, realizing that I haven't been honest with anybody. I mean, everybody thought that I was living this Christian life, and I was really having my own little reality. And so that was the day that I just really surrendered my life to God, and I realized He has to have everything, and He's going to use all of this for my own good, and my life can change for the better even if it's hard now.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So if this happened after
Mm-hmm.
your first experience coming to the well,
Mm-hmm.
which we already discussed was about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So this event is fairly, last 1.5 years of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what, for somebody that was born and raised in church
Mm-hmm.
and really went to church your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
what can you identify as different from when you truly got saved,
Mm-hmm.
truly in your own heart, your own decision, made the decision not to get baptized, right? Not to say the sinner's prayer necessarily, but you made the decision to truly, sincerely follow God.
Mm-hmm.
What has been different since that time?
Well, growing up, church was just kind of more like a routine thing. I mean, my family took it very seriously, but in my own head, it was just what we did, and I didn't really know anything different. And so now, after truly being saved, church isn't just a routine for me. It's like I want to be there, and I learn constantly. Like every time I'm there, I learn something new, and I think that I needed to go through all of that in order to realize what my own faith was and how it wasn't in my parents, and they couldn't do it for me. And so I think through all of this, I've realized that my faith is my own, and I can't just lean on my parents for the rest of my life. And I can just tell, I understand why people pray. I remember never really understanding how people prayed all the time. I thought that was just what you did on Sundays. And so now I really understand why it's important to take time every day to pray and have a true relationship with God, and how God really does speak to you. I thought that was fake too. I just thought people were making it up. But God really does speak to you when you're spending time with Him, and you're in His Word daily, and you're surrounding yourself with Christ-like people. I mean, it's just a true difference in my life.
That's awesome. Very awesome. Do you have any notes that you'd say to any college students right now that are maybe in the position that you were in?
It is hard to go to church and still, have those influences in your life in class or wherever you're at, but I don't know. I just think that when your mindset is truly there, and you're really creating time to have one-on-one time with God, and going to church, and maybe attending a college small group, it all just kind of falls into place. And even when you're in an uncomfortable position where somebody questions you, it's not really uncomfortable when you have God's word in your heart, and you're able to respond in a Christ-like way.
That's awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story with us. Do you have any final thoughts?
I don't. We just enjoy having you at the well, and we're sure appreciative and love seeing what God's doing in your life.
Thanks.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.